So welcome back to Kickin It Her Way podcast. In this episode we're going to be talking a lot about the different fixtures that we've had going on. We had last weekend's WSL fixtures, we also had a few Subway League Cup fixtures midweek, and then going on to this weekend's fixtures as we have some big games coming up. And then obviously we're going to talk about transfer news because there's been a lot in the press at the moment, so let's get going. So midweek we had some of the Subway League Cup quarterfinals, a lot of goals in some of these games. So let's start off with Chelsea v Durham. Durham are doing quite well in their league this season, but unfortunately for them it was a 5-0 defeat from the Blues. The Blues had a lot of chances. It was insane. The amount of chances they had and did not score within the first half was crazy, that they went into the second half only 1-0 up. There was also quite a lot of offsides. Aggie Beaver-Jones was called offside quite a few times. Hopefully they fix that before this weekend's fixture against Arsenal. We had 5 different goal scorers with Oriane Jean-Francis, Veriton, Cuthbert, Hermano, and obviously Aggie Beaver-Jones. Oriane's goal was absolutely insane, and what a strike that was, probably the best one out of all the game goals that evening. Then we moved on to Arsenal v Brighton. Now, this was another game that was quite a few goals involved with it. It ended 4-0 from 4 separate goal scorers. Next up, we have Arsenal v Brighton, where there were quite a few goals in the end. At the start, Brighton really started well, played great performances, and Renee must have said something very good at half-time because Arsenal came out and absolutely smashed it out of the park, especially in the late quarter of the game. Caldente, big up Caldente, because she did absolutely amazingly through assisting to scoring, and her overall play and performance on the pitch. She definitely deserved the player of the match, which she did get in the end, and the final score was 4-0 from 4 separate goal scorers, again with Frida Maanum, McCabe, Cooney Cross and Caldente. So we have 2 semi-finalists. Moving on to the next 2 fixtures, we had Tottenham v West Ham. Now, I feel like the score and the result in the end, many people were shocked at. Next up, we had Tottenham Hotspur v West Ham, and it was the Lily Whites who were hammered out of the cup, if you get that reference, by West Ham after a 2-1 victory to West Ham. Arthur Thomas was the first one to commence the goals of that night for Tottenham in the first 12 minutes. However, it was not their day, as then Onto scored 2 more just before the second half, and that was game. It was 2-1, and it's West Ham who went through to the semis. And then we had, last but not least, Manchester Derby in the cup. And it's crazy because we just had the Manchester Derby in the league as well, but that's just how it panned out. In this derby, however, it went in the honour of the Citizens this time, which has pushed them through to the semi-finals. It was Laura Coombs who kicked it off for City in just the 12th minute, and then Millie Turner equalised in the 35th minute. But City did not want to stand for that, and they definitely did not settle for that, as City's wonder kid Lily Murphy scored, as well as setting up Coombs earlier on in the game. What a star player, and definitely another player to look out for in the future, and her name will definitely be in the history books. So that's who won the quarterfinals. So in the semi-finals, we have Chelsea v West Ham and Arsenal v Man City. A tough fixture, Arsenal v Man City. Chelsea a bit on the easier side, however, we're not saying that because we don't want to estimate West Ham's power, you never know. So in case you wanted to know, the semi-finals of the Subway League Cup are supposed to commence on the 5th of February. However, it might change to the 6th of February, so just look out for that. Now, we are officially halfway through the season and starting to commence our second half of the Barclays Women's Super League, as last weekend we hit matchday 11 of 22 in the Barclays Women's Super League. First up, we had Liverpool v Brighton, and Olivia Smith, can we shout her name out from the rooftops because she was an absolute powerhouse. She scored the first goal for Liverpool in the 31st minute, but then Paris tried to put it back for Brighton with a goal and an equaliser in the 66th minute. But it was an own goal in the 82nd minute by Carabali, which meant that Liverpool got the 3 points and helped them move up in the table. We then had Everton v Aston Villa, and there were some amazing saves from D'Angelo in this game. And it was mostly equal with possession between these two teams, but Villa definitely had more dominance with their attack and their attempts on goal. Rachel Daly scored first in the 31st minute, but then it was a goal in the 89th minute by Sari, which meant that it was equal points, and both teams would be taking home 1 point to add to their position in the table. We then had Tottenham v Leicester City, which ended a 1-0 win for the Lily Whites after an own goal from Howard in the early minutes of the game, which is obviously heartbreaking for City. They need to strengthen their team a bit more, their performances, if they want to move up in the league table. They're really low in the league table at the moment and definitely not in the securest of positions. I think they're only 1 point above Crystal Palace, who are currently in 12th. And we all know that that could change at any point. So if they really want to secure their position, they need to start winning games, or at least getting some few draws in. We then had Arsenal v Crystal Palace, and after a long 679 days, it was a Leah Williamson goal in the 6th minute that kicked off the game. It then got a bit quiet, however, it wasn't their finest opening halves, and Arsenal came out much stronger in the second half. Both games now, they've come out stronger in the second half. I'd really like to be in those changing rooms to see Renee's little pep talks, because she must be doing bits with them, with the pep talks, because they're coming out so much more stronger and much more together and like a powerhouse of a team. Crystal Palace, often they struggle in the second half. It's like they put all their effort into the first half, and if they get conceded again, their guards and gates drop. And I think they just need a bit more experience in their team. Came out in the second half with 4 goals by Russo, Mead, Caldente, and left the game with 5 goals and 3 points, pushing them into second place above Manchester City, which we're going to go on to last, but definitely not least. We then had West Ham v Chelsea, and it was yet another goals galore this weekend in the WSL, with a 5-0 win for the Blues. Unfortunately for West Ham, they did not play their best. Their defence wasn't the greatest. It was 5-0 with an own goal as well from Tysak, with Macario, Cuthbert, Aggie Beaver-Jones and Baltimore scoring the goals for Chelsea, which means that Chelsea remain on their unbeatable streak, not just in the WSL but throughout all competitions, which is still insane. And let me know if you think Chelsea can make it till the end of the season without getting beat. And last but certainly not least, once again, we have a Manchester derby, which was the first of 2 Manchester derbies to take place this week. We had United go up against City, and it wasn't as many expected. Ella Toone, absolutely insane. She came on that pitch and came to play hard. She was not going home without those 3 points, as she scored a hat-trick, which helped push her team to grabbing those 3 points and actually pushing them above City, as City are now in 4th place, which is absolutely crazy. And City are quite struggling with injuries at the moment, which is no excuse, because United absolutely smashed it out of the park. Obviously, City have quite a few injuries at the moment, so it is quite hard for them, but we're not taking away Manchester United's amazing performance and the win that they definitely deserved. But it's kind of that situation where we're in the transfer window now, and it's thinking, it's hard because you don't want to waste talent on the bench. You don't want to buy players for them to get wasted on the bench and kind of be there for injuries. But then it's cases like this where you're missing such key players, which is making an impact on your placement in the position of the league table. And it's interesting to see how City will come back from this. And hopefully their injuries are on the road to recovery and will be back soon, but it's not looking good for Citizens at the moment. So City dropping these points this weekend meant that they were pushed into 4th position, with Arsenal and Manchester United jumping above them into 2nd and 3rd position, with Brighton just 4 points behind Manchester City, and Chelsea still remaining on top with an amazing 7 points ahead of their closest competitors, which are currently Arsenal, which is very interesting considering we have the London derby this weekend, which I will go into next. So, as I said earlier, we are now officially in the second half of the Barclays Women's Super League season as we enter into matchday 12 of 22 this weekend, which is crazy. The time has gone so fast. So this weekend is full of fun fixtures, so let's get talking about what is going on. First up, on Saturday with a 12 o'clock kickoff, we have Villa going up against City. Could be quite a tough fixture for Villa, as City will be full of fire and wanting to get those 3 points in the bag so they can earn back their position in the table and go above Arsenal and United. We then have one of the biggest fixtures of this weekend, in my opinion, which is the London derby at Stamford Bridge. We have Chelsea going up against Arsenal. Obviously, I'd say this is probably one of the biggest rivalries, no doubt about it, in the Barclays Women's Super League. Arsenal will be wanting to take those 3 points so that they can lower that gap between 1st and 2nd position. But Chelsea will obviously be wanting to keep their unbeatable streak. We've got two absolutely powerhouses of women managers going up against each other. Technically, I'm not even looking at this as Chelsea v Arsenal. I'm looking at Renee v Sonia. It'll be really interesting. I think it's definitely going to be a good game. I mean, last year when it was at the Bridge, Chelsea v Arsenal, it wasn't the best of games. I think obviously Chelsea got the win, great for Chelsea, but I feel like Arsenal could have performed better. So I think we're all expecting Arsenal to absolutely bring it, especially after losing to Chelsea at home at the beginning of the season at the Emirates, which was the first time that Chelsea picked up 3 points in the Barclays Women's Super Leagues at the Emirates. We then have Crystal Palace v Spurs. Once again, Palace, they will be wanting to pick up points so that they can get themselves out of the relegation zone. They're not far behind Leicester City at all, who are currently in 11th and just 1 point above Palace. They've made a couple of signings as well in the recent days, so we'll talk about that one in the next segment. Spurs also having a little bit of a disadvantage due to them having a midweek fixture. Palace, their players may be more rested, well recovered from the weekend before, but we'll have to see how that one goes. We then have Leicester City v Liverpool, and as I've said, Leicester City have struggled this season and will be wanting to beat Liverpool. They have that home advantage, so maybe that will give them that little bit of a push, but we'll have to see how that goes. But obviously, Liverpool will be wanting to better themselves, and they've got some powerhouse of players, and it'll be really interesting to see how that one goes. We then have West Ham v Everton, and these two are very close together in the league table. So a West Ham win would push them above Everton. So I think the fire in the competition, it will be so on for this game. And then we have Manchester United v Brighton. If Arsenal lose against Chelsea and Man United get this win on the weekend, it could put them into second position. But if Brighton grab the 3 points, it could help them close the gap between Brighton and Man City, which will be very interesting to see that bit tensing up if Man City and Brighton are really close together. So as you could kind of tell, it's a bit of a tense weekend, and it could all switch up in the league table positions, which I'm really excited to look into at the end of the weekend. Now let's talk a bit about transfer window news, because it has been popping off this week. It's been news after news after news and rumours after rumours, so let's get straight into it. First up, we had big news that Caroline has signed for Manchester City on a 3-year contract that will last her until 2028. I mean, what a player. She has just come from North Carolina Courage, which is in the NWSL, if you didn't know, which is the American Women's Soccer League. And what a signing. I've said that before and I'll say it again. What's an insane player. I'll be really interested to watch her play within the WSL and can't wait to see her get started. We had a Naomi Girma update, which was that loads of rumours that Chelsea was set to sign a contract and that she would undergo a medical examination at Chelsea by the end of the week. However, it's been a bit quiet within the media about this situation in the last few days, so unless something might have changed within that rumours or whether they're just trying to keep it on the down low. Sonia Bonpastor was asked about her in the post-match conference after the Durham game, but obviously she's not going to tell us anything, and she kept it very secretive. So whether she was just a very good actor or maybe there's nothing there yet, we'll have to wait and see. It'll be really interesting if she does sign for us though before the end of the week and possibly be played in the London derby, which would be absolutely insane. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We had the sad news that Alana Kennedy has announced her departure from Manchester City and is actually over joining the NWSL and has signed for Angel City. We had yet another Manchester City departure, which was Sandy McIver announcing her departure from the club and has joined on a 3-year contract over in the NWSL for Washington Spirit. We've had quite a lot of done deals from the WSL over to the NWSL, which is really interesting to see. And then we had more news that Caitlin Hayes is departing Celtic, which was a big shock, but she said it was the right decision for her. And is actually joining the WSL as a Seagull. So she has signed a 3-year contract with Brighton in the WSL. In the Championship, which is at Saki Kamege, is transferring over from Roma to London City Lionesses, and that will be very interesting to see the Japanese international in the London City Lionesses team and in the Women's Championship. We had a Palace signing, which was at Rio Ling, has signed from Rosengard over to Palace and is hopefully there to bring the experience that is needed at Palace. We also had another Crystal Palace signing, which was Clarissa Larissy, who is the Canadian international signed for Palace, and it's going to be very interesting to see her play in the WSL for the rest of the season. And depending on how Palace do this season, maybe she will stay in the WSL or we'll see her play in the Women's Championship. We then had Verena Hanshaw, who is coming over to the WSL, signed for the West Ham team after her departure from Roma, and it will be her first time playing in England, which is very, very interesting, and I can't wait to see her get started. We had some sad news that Kenza Dali is departing Aston Villa and is a free agent. She said it is the right decision for her to make and the one she needed to make, which is fair enough. She hasn't been getting much playing time over at Aston Villa, and we all know how class of a player she is, so it'll be interesting to see where she goes next. We also had Riley Foster signing for the Championship team Durham, who actually played some time this week in the Subway League Cup fixture against Chelsea. And we also had some sad news for Arsenal fans, which was that Katrine Cole has signed for Roma after struggling for minutes at Arsenal. Once again, it's the right decision, the decision that needs to be made in honour for her to progress as a player. Then had the Japanese international under-20s player Oyama, who has signed for Manchester City. It will be very interesting to see her get underway at City. She is a class player, and it will be interesting to see if she gets minutes over at City. So, seeing as we've got the London Derby this weekend, I feel it's only right we talk about two amazing managers who have absolutely powerhoused their team through this season, especially one of them who came in at a rough time for the club and has definitely developed their form and their run of performances. So let's get into it. So, as I like to say, it's time for Sonia Bonpastor v Renee Slagers. So we'll talk about Renee first. So she actually only signed a permanent head coach contract with Arsenal just last week. She has been the interim coach of Arsenal Women's since the departure of Jonas Eidevall in October 2024, and she oversaw them with an unbeaten run of 10 wins and 1 draw throughout all competition and 31 goals scored, just conceding 5 times. Take a minute to breathe in and think about those amazing stats. I mean, insane. And what a coach. What a coach. I'm speechless. Renee's impact was definitely recognised throughout the Barclays Women's Super League, especially as she won the Barclays Women's Super League Manager of the Month in December, as well as helping Arsenal women qualify for the Women's Champions League quarter-finals. And then next up, of course, we have Sonia Bonpastor, who came in after the departure of Emma Hayes. Obviously, Emma Hayes left with a big legendary status over at Chelsea and helped Chelsea become the highly accomplished team that they are today. So it was a lot of pressure for Sonia to step into this role, a lot of pressure to make sure that they win and maintain their status as the reigning champions. After her first month in charge at Chelsea, she won the Barclays Women's Super League Manager of the Month as well in September and November. She also went on to become the first coach in WSL history to win the first 7 games in the competition, which once again, absolutely insane statistics throughout all of their competitions that they are involved in. Adobe FA Cup, League Cup and Women's Champions League and the league itself. She's had no losses so far, only 1 draw and the rest are all wins, which is absolutely insane. So with the high expectations of both of these coaches, the pressure really is on for Sunday, and I think it's going to be an amazing game. I mean, both teams have absolutely insane balls of play, so I'm really hoping it's a good game on the weekend. I think it will be. I think both teams are going to bring that intensity. They both know what's at stake here. This could help Arsenal catch up in the league title race if they were to win. Chelsea, however, they've been unstoppable and their performance has just been insane. As you can probably tell, there's one team I prefer to win, but if I'm being completely honest, I know Arsenal have been on incredible form recently and you can't deny that. But also Chelsea have too. I don't think it will be a draw. I think there'll definitely be one team. I'd love it to be my team, if I'm being honest. I think it will be a late minute goal that is the decider of the scoreline. But I don't think it's going to be a draw. I hope not anyway. That won't be as fun. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast and make sure you stay tuned for more content on my social media accounts, which are linked below. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Kickin' It Her Way.